Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we hope you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jon Hubbard, shareholder and consultant here at Boomer Consulting. And with me today is Marc Staut. Hi, Marc. Thank you for being on this episode of the podcast.
Thanks for having me back again, Jon. Always glad to be here.
Absolutely, Marc. Marc is our Chief Innovation and Technology Officer, and you've been in the accounting profession and the technology profession for many years. So this is a great topic for you, and that is creating career paths for your IT professionals. So sometimes creating career paths for your IT professionals within firms could be an afterthought, could be something that maybe some firms don't proactively think about, but they're obviously super critical to the success and the business strategy of the firm. So why is it important, Marc, for firms to really think about creating those career paths for their IT professionals?
Yeah, and first and foremost, I want to thank you, Jon, for not pointing out how many years I've been doing this. I've started counting it by decades now, not really trying to think too hard about that. But that actually gives a little bit of perspective about this topic. I have been doing this for a really long time. When I was in my firm, I was there for 17 years, and we grew from a pretty small firm to a top 10 firm while I was there. And we had to develop our talent at every step of the way. It was so important. One of the challenges that firms have is when they hire technology people, generally they think they're hiring a specialist, and they are. They're hiring somebody who's really good at what they do in a fairly narrow area. They may be super specific and have a very high level of expertise in one area, or they may be more generalized, but they are very much professionals, very much good at what they do. And so you hire them and you think, okay, this person's good. I don't need to worry about what's next for them. The problem is technology always changes. Technology evolves faster today than it ever has before, and it evolves as slow today as it ever will be. So the rate of change is continuing to go. One of the problems that I see firms have is sometimes they outgrow their technology people. And that's not just on the technology people side of it's not an issue just for the technology people, it's an issue for the firm as well. If you have somebody who's really good in an operating system that is obsolete or is a little bit longer in the tooth and doesn't keep up with the modern standards, or they only are comfortable with on-prem solutions versus cloud solutions, you're really going to be handicapping the vision and the opportunities within your firm for that. So we want to make sure that we don't get to a point where we are feeling left behind or that technology is leaving us behind, which means we have to be always right on top of it, have to be really investing to make sure that we are anticipating what those next big skills and those next opportunities for the firm are going to be.
That's great. So how can firms kind of properly not only just kind of be on top of that, of what you were talking about, but also support the careers and the growth and the trajectory for the IT professional?
You know, it's funny, in so many firms, they have a lot of effort that goes into career planning for the CPAs, for the accountants. And the same type of effort needs to go into all roles, honestly, not just technology, but all operational roles as well. Think about, where are you now and where do you want to go? This is the importance of having a plan. I feel like on these podcasts, we always are talking about having a strategic plan. This is the same type of thing. We want to look, where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where does the firm want to be in 3 years or 5 years? And how do we make sure that those two things are continuing to mesh? How are we going to think about the skills that we're going to need down the road, and that the skills that you have interest in, and where do we find those crossovers, those overlaps? Because it is way more affordable to train good people who know your firm, know your business, know your technology in new skills than it is to go out and find those skills and try to teach them your business. And I think a lot of firms miss that point.
Yep. You and I just recorded one episode where we talked about technology strategy being business strategy. And you just highlighted that with syncing up the career paths of the IT professional with where the business is going and the business needs. And I think that's great. So what are some tangible ways you've seen firms do that? If you could give maybe a couple examples, or kind of, if, because I know you know a lot of firms out there, if you've seen firms do this well, what are some of the results that they're kind of getting from that?
Yeah, a couple of different things. Two different approaches, really. One is kind of looking at it from a hierarchical approach or an org chart structure. And I don't mean who is managing who and who reports to who, but how are we really structuring our technology department? Do we have an applications group that focuses solely on supporting those? Or do we have a bunch of generalists? Or do we have some hardware people or systems and infrastructure people? Most of the time when people come in and they start at some of the lower levels, or the opening to their career, it's they're closing tickets and they're answering calls, and not a lot of IT people want to do that for the rest of their lives. Some do, and some are really, really good at it, but most of them want to move into something that is a little bit more specialized, a little bit more unique, and a different way to leverage their talents. So sitting down and saying, okay, well, here's how we are structured. Where do you think you might want to go? And then talk about ways to move them in those directions. Can you pair them with somebody else, mentor them, and have them shadow somebody else, so that they are starting to see what really goes into it to get that type of thing. There are also plenty of training courses that are out there, especially when you're just getting started out, or if you're looking for a new certification. There are many certification paths for IT professionals that can kind of help people set those stepping stones for their career. I want to have this certification, which will lead to this next one, which will lead to this third one, which will qualify me for the job that I want, type of thing. So there is some structure that is there. Now, the hardest part, though, is the higher you go in the technology hierarchy, as it were, the harder it is to find training. So when you're first starting out and you don't have as much experience, there's a ton of opportunities. As you continue to specialize, as you continue to get better and better at something that you're focused on, it gets a lot harder and sometimes more expensive to get that training. So we need to be thinking a little bit more creatively there. Can we embed a person who has some analytical skills? Can we embed them with the audit department or the tax department to hone their skills? I actually know of several IT people, IT leaders actually, who went back and they actually studied for and got their CPA, so that they would be better able to work with the business and understand the requirements and the flow of the business there. That is some outside the box thinking, but those are the opportunities that, as you move up that career ladder, you're going to want to think about to add more and more value to your firm.
So you started to touch on IT leadership there at the end. Can you speak
Yep.
to a little bit about just the importance of firms that, if they haven't, embraced an IT director or an IT manager or a CIO, just kind of how crucial that is to this whole conversation?
Absolutely. And, I use IT leadership for a very specific reason, because it's not about a title. I get asked all the time, well, I've got an IT director. Do I need a CIO? Well, it depends. Does your IT director do CIO level work? Or is your CIO at an IT director level? And don't get too caught up in those titles. What you really need is strategic leadership, somebody who's got a vision for technology within the firm, and someone who has a plan for moving them forward. Now, you can absolutely outsource some pieces of technology. Some firms outsource almost everything. Others outsource pieces. That is absolutely viable, but you really can't outsource the strategy. The strategy has to stay internal because you have to have skin in the game. And that's where you want that IT leader, somebody who's got the vision, somebody who has a plan to make it happen, and somebody who can develop other people and the systems that go along with them to really get the firm there.
That's great, Mark. And when I work with firms, a lot of the times it's around the topic of growth. And sometimes if a firm is kind of being sluggish on maybe making a decision around a certain topic, I like to propose this question about whatever it is we're talking about. And I'll use IT leadership as kind of, or kind of this career path for IT professionals, but also IT leadership as the example. If your number one competitor had clear career paths for their IT professionals, were investing in their IT professionals to align them with the strategic business objectives of the firm, and those were in lockstep, and they were attracting and retaining the best IT professionals, would that make you a little nervous? And everyone would say, yes, that would. Then you
Not a
should
little
really
nervous.
consider doing it for yourself, for your own firm. So there is some strategic advantages here.
Absolutely. It is. That's a great way to frame that question, John. And I've seen you do that multiple times before, and the faces of people when you do it, you can see the light bulb go off. But it's especially pertinent for technology, because technology should be a competitive advantage for your firm. It is part of your business. It is how you are going to deliver things, how you are going to interact with your clients, how you are going to get work created and delivered. There are so many pieces of the business that just simply can't be done without technology anymore. So you want it to be a competitive advantage because you have developed the right people and the right roles. If you do not do that, technology oftentimes becomes overhead, right? It becomes a cost center. It's what you have to have just to play the game. It's table stakes, but you're not really getting anything near what you should be getting out of it to grow your firm.
Yep. So, we always like to look outside the profession with any topic we're talking about, and, think about, okay, what's going on outside the profession that's relevant to the accounting profession related to this topic. So I think there's some low-hanging fruit here, but as you think about this topic as it relates to non-CPA firms, non-accounting profession, what are you seeing out there that's important for our listeners to understand?
Yeah, even firms that are doing a lot of investment in technology probably aren't doing enough compared to non-CPA firms. They spend so much time and effort in there. They look at that technology investment that they're making, and they think about their people as a big part of it as well. In many cases, in a firm, talent is your top expense, and your second expense is technology. Well, if you're not actually investing in your technology talent, you're probably not getting the value that you need to be there. So again, forward thinking, they're always trying to train people on what is coming next. So we are seeing some of the best firms that we work with and some of the best companies that are out there focus less on actual practical skills now, and they're focusing much more on innovation and innovative thinking and integration with the business, so that they are getting not just trained on the technology skills, but on the business aspect as well. So they know how the firm makes money, what it can do to really improve their profits, increase their revenues, and looking at it through the technology lens gives them that distinct advantage. So don't think of the training as just it has to be on the technology ladder. You also want to train your technology people in the business ladder as well.
I'm sitting here smiling because you just gave me a huge aha, which seems so obvious now that you say it. But, of course, we know the number one expense is talent for firms, and then technology. And what you're talking about is a combination of those two things, talent and technology.
Yep.
And it's like, well, of course, why? And that's worthy of serious attention and training and development and growth. And, so I love that you said that. For our listeners, as we kind of round out this episode, Marc, what are some next steps someone should take? They stop listening to the podcast and they're ready to maybe take an action or two related to this topic. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so if you are a technology professional listening to this, give some thought to what you want to do. Look at the organizational structure and say, where is it that my interests are, and what are some opportunities to move forward there? If you are not in the technology group, but you have a technology group in your firm, have a conversation. Sit down and talk to some of the technology people and ask them what it is that they're interested in. What are the goals that they want to accomplish in their career. All of these things start with conversations. That doesn't have to be overly complicated, but making sure that you are connecting the technology and the business to move in concert to develop the necessary skills and opportunities that both are going to need. That's where you get your exponential multiplier. So the business has to talk to the tech people have to talk to the business.
Awesome. So for our listeners, if they want to get in contact with you, Marc, how should they do that?
Any of the usual ways, social media. You can find me at Twitter at CPA Tech Geek. You can find me on LinkedIn. I believe it is M Staut. And of course, we have our boomer.com website that has links to all of those things. You can just go there, look in the Who We Are section, and you can find me that way.
Awesome, Marc. Well, as always, thank you for being on this episode of the podcast. It's been a great time.
My pleasure.
All right. For our listeners, if you enjoyed this topic, we release new episodes every Tuesday morning, and we're always changing up the topic. But one common theme is they are critical business issues that we help you solve in 20 minutes or less. So please subscribe. Thanks so much.